Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Recollection Step, a Grand Archive TCG podcast, part of the Maindeck podcast family. I'm Dan.
And I'm Taylor. And yeah, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We've got an excellent episode for you today. We are going to be going over the Guo Jia spoilers, since we went over the Dao Chan spoilers last time. We're diving into what the new Recollection deck has in store for us. There's some pretty dope looking mechanics and cards and fun things to do with Guo Jia. So I'm pretty excited for this deck. I'm looking forward to it a lot more than I thought I was, Dan. You know me, resident Sylvie hater in the house. Absolutely. I was ready to hate Guo Jia on site. Just like you see the Tamer type line and sends me into a just furious rage.
I don't even understand why you what's the origin story here? Why do you hate Tamer so much?
I don't actually. So I don't know if there's an origin story. I just so Sylvie just was I don't like her character design. And I feel bad because Weebs has done a really good job on designing every character in the game, and all their art direction's been amazing. Everything's cool. And they even did a good job on Sylvie. I'm not trying to take that away from them. It's just it's not for me. And I've never really liked in Final Fantasy games, right? There's always a Beastmaster class or something that shows up in whatever job. I've never liked those because you have to go around and capture all the monsters in order to use the skills and stuff. And I'm if I wanted to play Pokemon, I would play Pokemon. And I put my time in with Pokemon. And I'm not here for this in Final Fantasy. So I just have all these weird negative connotations and associations now with Tamer and Beastmaster and Animal Lover and Zoologist classes in RPGs and games and stuff. So I can't do it anymore.
That's really interesting. That's fascinating. In Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy goes in and out, right? They've got different, and talking about Final Fantasy is very TCG relevant right now too.
It sure is.
Yeah. But I'm always a big fan typically of the classes that have eclectic sets of abilities that are based on the monsters in the game. I'll say I prefer it's sometimes a blue mage style in Final Fantasy games, where instead of actually capturing the monsters, you're just taking their skills, right?
Yeah, it's Final Fantasy 4 where you have to get hit by their attacks in order to start using it as a blue mage, I think.
Yeah.
Comment in the comments below if I'm wrong there. There's been 16 of these games. So
I don't think 4 has a blue mage, because 4 has a bunch of dedicated characters.
Yeah. Well, then, I'm thinking 5. I'm thinking 5. The one where you have the two different worlds, and then the last one it overlays. Yes.
I never finished 5, so I actually can't confirm whether or not that's correct.
But 5 might not be a blue mage either. It might be they might have had just a straight up
there was a blue mage in 5. I do remember that. I do remember that for sure. 5 is one of the ones where you have open class choice.
Yeah, you have it's one of the first huge job selection games. Final Fantasy 3 I think really introduced it. Final Fantasy 2 was actually I think my favorite iteration of their weird.
Oh my god, I hate Final Fantasy 2.
It was really bad, but if I would have loved to have seen them iterate on it, because I think they could have made it really good.
Yeah. It's just sorry. This is not the Final Fantasy
podcast. We're getting too far into the weeds here, so sorry about that. Guo Jia. We're going to talk about Guo Jia. Before that, though, we're going to dive into the episode. We just got Nat's information today. Finally dropped the dates for EU and NA Nats and kind of locations and all that good stuff for nationals for each region. So we'll go over that really quickly here to start as well. And then we'll dive into Guo Jia after that.
Yeah, this is just mega heads up because these are coming up really fast. Yes. And you're going to want to make sure you have your points in order if you want to attend this thing. And you definitely, this is an event that you want to try to attend if you can, because even if you think you're not like, necessarily the best player in the world, you're going to sharpen your skills, you're going to play against good ones. And if you do have a hot run and you get lucky, this is the event to top cut. This is the one you want to be top cutting. Ascents are great, obviously, but this is the one that sends you to Worlds, baby. And this is worth so much to get into.
Oh my gosh. Tell me about it. The pricing for just Nats alone is looking insane. And then Worlds is fantastic. So for those who have not heard yet, there's a nationals in each region, or for each region that Weeb supports currently. So there's 4 regions: Southeast Asia, Europe, Oceania, North America. Each one has a nationals. Each of those nationals feed into the World Championship for Grand Archive in June. Each region has a set number of slots they are sending players to, where the winners of those invites gets room and board and flight to Worlds and gets entered into this 32-person tournament. There's actually only 16 people that are getting those slots, though, from nationals. And then there's 32 more people that are winning slots at nationals for a last chance gauntlet tournament to get entry into the World Championship. So on top of the 16 that qualify directly to Worlds, there's going to be 32 more players that are invited to this gauntlet tournament the day before the World Championship. And they'll battle it out for the last 16 slots in that championship. And then the next 2 days is going to be just really awesome, fun, high-level Grand Archive for those 32 players. And they're playing for $68,000 worth of prizes, which is insane. Nats as well also just has some pretty good prize payout.
Yeah.
First place in most of them is getting like between $2,500 and $3,000. There's some sweet prize cards as well. There's a link up on the Grand Archive site going over most of this. So I recommend just going to that. The important thing to note is that, the first nationals is at the first weekend in April, and the last one is the last weekend in May. So it's going to be a quick bunch of tournaments over the course of 2 months. Go get signed up if you are interested in that.
Yeah, we will see you guys there, of course, at NA Nats. I am not sure about any of the other ones. Pretty unlikely, but stay tuned to social medias and stuff, and we'll update you if any of our plans change. But definitely, pretty much the entire main deck team will be at NA Nats for sure.
My goal, as much of a pie in the sky goal as this is to put all of us into the 18 slots that are feeding into Worlds and the gauntlet that we get in North America.
The entire thing is main deck.
The entire thing is main deck. I don't know if we actually have that many people on the team, but if we're going to take as many as we can get.
Yeah, we're pretty close. That'll be actually that. I think that's something that's been interesting too. Is a lot of people don't even know who is on the team, to the point where we aren't even listed on Sylvie.gg as a team, which is very inappropriate. Crothus, I'm going to throw a little. We should get on there. No, it's my fault because I haven't actually, like I said, I haven't labeled who's actually on the team or anything. So I will get that done, and then I'll send that. I'll just DM Crothus, going to be like, "Hey, let's get on here now."
Yeah. PR is not our strong suit over at Main Deck. We're too busy traveling to Utrecht and not making day 2.
You had to sit that in. It's my fault too. It's 100% my fault.
It is. I'm not going to let you live that one down. Well, actually, I will, because I need you in good spirits for upcoming tournaments here. But yeah, let's see. Dan, before, I think we covered Nats, right? Is there anything else you want to say?
I just want to mention that you want a day 2 Nats really bad, because that Sword of Sneaking Honshu art. Oh, that's kidding me.
That promo is insane. The promos are very good. The Internal Magistrate promo for the Worlds and Gauntlets qualifiers as well is very beautiful. Love it.
Oh, they're so good. They're so good. But yes. I really if I can't get my hands on one of those sort of Seekings, I'm going to be extremely jealous of anyone who goes to Lorraine level 1 and puts that out. I'll be like, are you kidding me right now?
I'll be exclusively playing Lorraine for quite a while after Nats if I can manage to day 2.
As if that's different than what you already try to do.
Well, I might just play full Lorraine instead of
full Lorraine
Merlin.
now. Well, I mean, you've been known to do that as well. But the thing that I think is so cool too is if you day two'd or, otherwise just bought or whatever promos from the previous nationals and this one, your Lorraine deck is so decked out because you'll have that sort of seeking from this year's, and then you'll be able to use last year's Spirit Blade Ascension on that sword when you're bringing out your Prismatic Edge, and you get that little like Hey Drake grin, when you're doing it because you're about to destroy your opponent's memory. It's good stuff.
Beautiful. All right, well, Dan, before we get to Guo Jia, why don't you tell the listeners at home how they can help support the channel if they're interested in that,
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. And this is not going to be the same stuff I always tell you guys. Actually, there's going to be something new included in this one as well. So if you guys enjoy a Recollection Step or any of the other podcasts or video form content, whatever you like that we do, if you like it and you want to support the channel, there's a few things you can do. Number one, pop down to the bottom, leave a comment, let us know if you're going to nationals or, if you're planning on doing it next year or something. Let us know what your plans are for nationals. We'd love to hear from you. We can, get a list of everyone who we're going to be hoping to see at nationals, which would be really cool. So let us know that down below and which nationals you're going to as well, because we don't necessarily know from your comment. And then leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, do all that kind of good stuff. That helps us out a ton. Leave a 5-star review on a podcast platform. That's all great. Now, if you want to support us monetarily, I'm actually going to give you a couple options today that are really, really helpful to us. Number one, the usual one is when you're buying singles. Hey, Taylor, singles on TCG Player for GA, that's been that's been growing a little bit lately. I don't know if you've caught that.
It's been starting to pop off.
Yeah, they're getting they're starting to get a little closer to Merlin's Marketplace as far as just prices and everything. And I think that's because we have more demand growing as the game is starting to grow up there. And that means people are popping more cards on to sell because they're selling. It's all really good. But if you're buying your singles on TCG Player, folks, and you want to give a little cutback to us without spending any extra money, we have an affiliate link you can use down in the description. So instead of going to TCG Player, just go ahead and bookmark the affiliate link in the description. Anytime then you go to TCG Player to shop for stuff, you'll automatically send a little kickback towards us, which is super beneficial, really, really helpful to us. So thank you all so much for doing that. And then I just was announcing, as of recording this today, I announced that we have a special new partnership with our LGS JWW, or JDubs, we just call it.
JDubs.
But that sponsorship, or the partnership, is a sponsorship on their part where we've sort of I've refreshed and redone our tiers on Patreon. Link to that is in the description as well. And now if you are a patron of Maindeck at the $10 tier, going forward every month, you're going to get sent a $10 coupon code for jdubscards.com, which you can use to pre-order the next Grand Archive set or order other Grand Archive or supplies that you need, sleeves, deck boxes, or tons of other card games. So basically, your patronage is free. If you just use that every month. It's good only during that month, but it does stack with other discounts. So we offer a discount code Maindeck, 5% off. You still get the $10 off in addition to getting that discount code as well on the stuff that you're buying. So
wow, what a deal.
It is honestly, it's a pretty great deal. It's good. It's a win-win-win for everyone. It hopefully gets some more people to support us. It gets you guys the money back, basically. So you're just getting free content as long as you just order stuff from JDubs, and then it helps JDubs get some more orders as well. So it's what we call a win-win-win.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, those are some of the ways you can support us. Thank you all so much for your support. Taylor, we're going to talk about Guo Jia.
We are going to talk about Guo Jia. And before we talk about her, though, you'll notice we're not butchering her name nearly as badly as we previously did. So
you said we were all right.
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. It was all right. But Belle, the lore designer, flavor architect, story composer at Weebs of the Shore. I'm not sure what her official title is, but I know she is in charge of all the cool things, story and lore related.
Maybe narrative lead, I think might be.
Ooh, there you go. Thank you. Narrative lead. But anyway, the other day she put out a tweet. There we go. She put out a tweet describing how to properly pronounce Guo Jia and Dao Chan's names. which was very appreciated. Obviously was having a lot of trouble. If you've listened to the previous podcast, I think I've probably said Dao Chan's name like 9 different ways at this point. So I'm very thankful for Belle's tweet and pronunciation guide.
Yeah, that was really helpful. She's been interesting to follow on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, where she regularly posts kind of interesting, just little like occasional little story teasy tidbits and stuff. And otherwise, she just kind of memes like the rest of Weebs does. So it's always a good time. We love our like Silidar memes and everything on the socials as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely give her a follow. If I remembered, I put a link down to her Twitter in the description as well. And if it's not down there, well, I just forgot, but you can find her. I believe in you.
And if you did forget, also help us out. Put it in the comments below.
Oh, yeah. Then remind me, and then I'll do it. That's helpful, too. Okay. I want to introduce... I have a like kind of introduction in mind to Guo Jia.
Yeah.
For people who are just kind of like, you haven't been following the spoiler season obsessively like the entire main deck team does. And you just know, there's some cool decks or whatever coming, and I'll check them out when they release. But maybe now you're here to hear a little bit about what is the Guo Jia Recollection deck? What's Guo Jia about? So Guo Jia is the new Tamer. A lot like Dao Chan was the new Cleric. We talked about that last week. Guo Jia is the new Tamer here, and Guo Jia is introducing a different style of Tamer gameplay than we've really had before. It's very fascinating, and it was very unexpected to see that Guo Jia relies a lot on cards that flip. They have 2 sides, or we call them dual face cards. And Guo Jia's entire gameplay revolves usually around one particular dual face card that you'll have in your material deck, which is going to be one of the 4 Fate Stones that turn into one of the 4 Auspicious Beasts. Outside of that, your deck for Guo Jia may include some number of other flippy cards, different types of basically rocks that turn into animals of some kind. And throughout the game, a lot of her gameplay is about building up quest counters to allow you to flip your main Fate Stone into the Auspicious Beast, at which point it becomes just this monster that's really hard to take down, and then just tries to, delete your opponent in a couple of turns. Very different than, so we've had like the Slime Sylvie deck that was all about just kind of building up to level 3 and then just flooding slimes onto the board, or in particular, just Storm Slime. And we've had other Tamer, the previous Tamer decks, Tamer kind of archetype stuff has been leaning a lot on counts of animals or beasts, or just trying to make beasts really big with buff counters and stuff. Just a variety of like, they're all ally related strategies, but in this case we have like almost a mix between like a Merlin style, like I'm going to bring out the deer and I'm going to win the game with this really hard to answer deer, and more of a traditional Tamer thing. So if that sounds appealing to you guys, I highly recommend you try and grab one of these Guo Jia Recollection decks. And I'll tell you, grab them before they're gone, because the amount of sales that we've been seeing for the set so far has been actually unprecedented. So I fully expect these Recollection decks to not last forever and have to get a reprint at some point, sooner rather than later.
Yep. Yeah, they're going to go very quickly, especially with how successful the first 2, the Sylvie and the Tristan Recollection decks were. Like, people just have really high expectations for these now. Yeah. And I don't think they will be disappointed. Let's dive into it. So like Dan said, Guo Jia's theme revolves all around these Fate Stones, right? These transforming objects that turn into magical beasts and animals. These already are very much cooler than regular lame, boring animals that like Sylvie dealt with, because they're magical.
They are magical.
They are super cool. And these auspicious beasts that are kind of the cornerstone of a lot of her decks, we think, are super cool cards. They are huge monsters and behemoths. And some of these are like insane. Like they all start at like, they're all in your material deck, right? So they're all regalia. They all have memory costs. Dan, some of these memory costs are like 6 and 7 and 8 and 9.
Yeah. 7, 8, 9, 10 actually is what the four of them are.
6. Yeah. How do you get these out? I don't understand.
Well, you put your whole hand in memory and then banish it to put it out and then lose the game. That's that would be bad. Yeah. So I think it's kind of tough. It's kind of tough to approach this because we have to show you guys like multiple things at the same time, but we're going to start with just Guo Jia level 1, Guo Jia Chosen Disciple. She is a level 1 Tamer human champion with 19 health. And then on enter, if you don't control a Fatestone Regalia, reveal all cards in your material deck. Then put a Fatestone Regalia card with the lowest memory cost from among them onto the field. So what you're actually going to do is just reveal your entire material deck to your opponent. You do have to show them, like, here's all the stuff that I might materialize this game. And then you find whichever Fatestone is in there with the lowest cost, and then that goes into play for free, no matter what elements you have unlocked, and you don't pay any cost either. So that's really important because we'll look at all four of them in just a second, I think briefly, because it would be like it would be an entire podcast per auspicious beast to really, I think, talk about how to unlock their potential or whatever. Mm-hmm. But inside, we'll talk mostly about Seiryu, which is the one that comes inside the Recollection deck. And then we will just talk very, very briefly about Suzaku, Genbu, and Byakko, because those are the ones you're going to get in the main Abyssal Heavens set, which then you can build different decks around if you're feeling spicy. So what you're going to get in the Recollection deck with this Guo Jia deck is you're going to reveal your material deck and put out Fabled Azurite Fatestone, which is a 10 cost arcane regalia item Tamer Fatestone. And again, the cost doesn't matter, and the element doesn't matter either. Although it is just kind of cool that we have arcane back. A lot of like Rai fans out there excited for this set. This has Immortal and Spell Shroud. The Immortal, meaning that it can't die. You can't sacrifice it to anything. It just, and I do have confirmation that is going to be the rule for these as well. So I just, in case we have the rules hawks out there, there's a quirk in the rules right now, but it'll be fixed on release.
Oh, I really, because you already can't like sacrifice immortal objects.
You can't sacrifice immortal units. As per the rules.
I see.
That is being fixed with a ton of other things for Abyssal Heavens new mechanics. There's a ton of other little tweaks that are happening to the comp rules, but one of them is immortal objects can't be sacrificed. Can't die to anything, basically. It's there. It's going to sit out there. It could theoretically be banished or sent to another zone, but it has Spell Shroud too, which means there's basically nothing that's going to touch this thing. You can touch it yourself if you have skills that aren't spells, like actions that are skills and not spells. That's fine, or abilities that trigger. Your opponent could as well, but those are few and far between. Mm-hmm. So Fabled Azurite Fatestone has a couple of Guo Jia bonuses on it. So you're not putting this in your Rai deck. Sorry, it's not gonna. I mean, you could, but it's not gonna do anything.
You're having a really bad time if this is in your Rai deck.
Again, banish your whole hand and go. All right, your turn. That's how you put it out. Okay, Guo Jia bonus. At the beginning of your end phase, you may banish a card at random from your memory. If you do, draw a card. And then we'll talk about it in just a sec. Whenever you banish a card from your memory, put a quest counter on your champion. And the whole point of that is that you can then rest this at some point and remove 10 quest counters from your champion in order to wake it up and transform it into Seiryu, who we'll talk about in just a second. But I'm going to go back now and say we've played with these decks a whole bunch at this point. We have actually a good amount of experience with both decks. And I can tell you that right away, I crazy underrated that first ability. This is so good. It's so good. Wow. Go ahead. You go ahead. I'm just talking a lot, Taylor. You go ahead. Why is this good?
Cycling a card from your memory for free at the end of your turn is just, it's very insane. Like you end up seeing a lot more cards per game because of this, and it costs you nothing except for going to level 1. It's really, really just very impactful to how many cards you see. Gives you a lot more options over the course of a game.
And it's in your turn cycle, you are actually your hand size as far as like how many cards you can use across your turn and your opponent's turn is increased by 1. Yep. You'll put down 3 cards to play something on your turn, then banish one of those and draw a new card into hand. So you're up +1 card when it goes to your opponent's turn as well. Which is like, I think does a crazy amount for smoothing out Guo Jia's play, where like she feels like she's always got action to use.
Yep. Yeah, we'll get into it more as we get to the main deck here. But she has a ton of Fate Stones, and a lot of them have like activated abilities you have to pay reserve for. So just getting extra cards for free into your hand off your level 1 bonus, essentially, it just makes your gameplay a lot smoother.
Now, this thing is going to gain quest counters whenever that trigger happens, whenever you banish a card at random and draw a card, which is the other cool thing. It just always ticks up by 1. It also is going to get quest counters when you banish any other cards, and it is not when you banish 1 or more cards, but for each card you banish, you are going to get quest counters. So that does mean when you go to Guo Jia level 2, who we'll talk about shortly, and potentially even Guo Jia level 3, you have a whole bunch of cards you're able to banish in order to get those quest counters. And an interesting thing I think happens in the design of this character now, where with Guo Jia, you actually are like, you kind of don't want floating memory, right? That's been like kind of a weird, a quirk about her. But like, if you want to get that beast out a little faster, you are just going to go, no, I'm just going to banish from hand or from memory. That's fine. I don't want the float, which has been a cool thing. I think people in Grand Archive have been looking since set 1 really for alternatives to floating memory being as good as it is, and alternatives for Dungeon Guide being as useful as it is. And as we'll talk about later too, the Guo Jia deck is sort of subverting both of those in a couple of different ways, which is really neat.
Yeah, there's some very cool mechanics in Guo Jia that really flip a lot of what we think of as like hard and fast rules on their head, for sure.
Yeah. Now, speaking of flipping things on their head, when you flip over the fabled Azurite Fate Stone, you get Seiryu Azure Dragon. Excuse me, so many different like languages I'm trying to pronounce correctly here. Seiryu Azure Dragon is this is a great type line. Ally Tamer Beast Shenju Fatebound Dragon. And the funny thing is, every single one of those except dragon is relevant to the game. The dragon's the only one where like there isn't really anything that cares about dragons yet.
It's so none of these allies for the backside of the Shenju Fate Stones are unique, and I'm wondering if it's simply because they just did not have the room to put the word unique.
Yeah, no, that absolutely could be the case, because I mean, it's a named character, right? It should say it's unique, and that the fact that it's not unique actually has gameplay implications as well, which has been kind of fun. But onto the card. It is a 4/12. We love a stat line like that. We love a good deer. We love a good deer.
We love a good deer.
Speaking of a good deer, it's got Spell Shroud and Taunt. So it's when you want it to act like the big thing in the way and your opponent just can't get through you, it can absolutely do that. But what you're really going to want to do with Seiryu is to attack, because Seiryu has on attack, choose 1. So many people, I think, especially the old Rai fans, got so pumped about reading this entire card. Choose 1, generate an Arcane Blast card and banish it. As long as it's banished, you may activate it, ignoring its elemental requirements. And we'll talk about Arcane Blast in just a second, just to make sure you guys know what it does. But the other option you have with this, instead of generating the blast card, is to empower X +2, where X is the amount of arcane element cards in your banishment. So typically that's going to start at 3, because you'll usually attack and generate the Arcane Blast first. Then the second time you attack, you're either going to like generate another, or maybe you're going to empower 3 where you already have 1 banished. But after you get out of the Recollection deck and start building your deck up, you can start putting more like arcane cards in. You can actually build that up to start as a bigger empower. Now, why do we want to empower? Well, let's remember what Arcane Blast does.
Yep. For everybody who is newer to the game and has not, been playing since Rai fell into deep irrelevancy. Sorry, Rai fans. Sorry, Rai fans, but it's true.
Taylor does not believe. I think Rye's got some legs now, but we'll see.
We'll see. We will see. But Arcane Blast is an 11 cost arcane action mage spell with efficiency, which means it costs 1 less for each level you have. And then it deals 11 damage to target unit,
target champion,
which is a lot of damage. And yeah, like this empower you get off Seiryu will decrease the efficiency even more. Like normally you're activating it level 2 or 3 probably, so it's costing like 8 or 9. Empower makes it cost 5 or 6, even less if you got more arcane blasts you've created off of Seiryu or other arcane cards in banishment somehow.
Yeah, it's Seiryu is a 1 dragon army who is going to be bashing in for 4, really hard to take down. Can defend if you need to, but really every time Seiryu bashes, he's going to just generate a new blast or empower you to be able to cast a current blast. So whatever, on the turns when you get to cast your blast, he does 4 plus 11 damage for 15. And I think it'll be a little beyond the scope of this podcast, but there are some cards in the main set that will, if you're like, oh, I wish I could use both abilities in one turn. Well, we got some
fantastic news.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool cards that will work with Seiryu if you want to build your deck around Seiryu, if you like the sound of that. And I think you should, because there's no part of this card that doesn't, I think, get anybody excited here. From the front side, which is super resource efficient, card draw, card digging, good stuff, to the backside, which is just like mega Timmy, like overload with damage. Generating cards is always just like, it's a thing that almost exclusively is in Grand Archive and not really in any other TCG's paper forms. Like Magic's finally starting to put some in an upcoming set, or did it already come out?
Ooh, I don't think it's come out yet.
I don't pay close enough attention.
Yeah, I haven't seen actually what might be doing that in MTG yet.
They're bringing in the bird that makes the power 9. Or they brought it in maybe the mystery booster or something. I can't remember. It might be.
So they brought that in, but that's not like, they didn't bring it into like Legacy or Modern or anything like that. It's basically just kind of for fun formats and Commander and things like that.
I cannot confirm what
that they're printing that. It's still very cool that they're printing that in. Mystery Booster was kind of a weird one. It's quick tangent, because it had a lot of extra cards in it that were not going to be standard or modern or legacy legal or anything like that. Just like they were almost like a half unset, I think, in it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a little wonky.
But the thing,
again, correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't actually know for sure if that's the 100% details. So, or don't, because this isn't a Magic podcast. But.
No, the comments for this are going to be great. They're going to be, number 1, correcting us on Final Fantasy's mechanics. And then number 2, they're going to talk about Nationals, which is great. And then they're also going to include comments about Magic card legality or something. So it's going to be
and like also a link to Bell's Twitter probably.
And they're going to remind me that I didn't post the link.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, so we love generating cards because other card games are too cowardly to do it.
Yes.
And Grand Archive doesn't care. They're like, it's fine. Just grab some arcane blasts and sleeve them in the same sleeves. It's not that hard, and it really is. And it's very, very fun. So yeah, so that's Seiryu. Now I did mention we are going to get into like the rest of the cards here in just a moment, but I'm going to briefly mention the other beasts just because they are like mega cool. We have Suzaku Vermilion Phoenix, which is the fire auspicious beast. The front side is this is a 7 quest counter and a 7 cost beast, and the front side is going to give you a free damage to each champion at the start of your recollection phase. So you're always this is a very fire champion where you're just going to ping both champions, boom, 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 every single turn of yours. And then whenever non-combat damage is dealt to one or more units by a fire element source you control, you put a quest counter on it as well. When you flip this thing with the 7 quest counters, it becomes a 4/3 with Spell Shroud. And then this is very powerful, but on banish, you may banish 3 fire element cards from your graveyard. If you do, return Suzaku to the field transformed. I actually covered, this was our spoilers for the set. So I talk about it a lot more in that spoiler video. So make sure to go back and check that for some hot little strategy tips. But we found Suzaku to be a pretty potent fire aggro finisher for if you're a Guo Jia fan who likes just burning and dealing damage fast.
Mm-hmm. Also, comment in the below the video if Dan does not link that video, please.
This is gonna be hella comments here.
I'm only here to engagement farm today. Actually, that's my whole. I don't even know what Guo Jia does. I lied at the beginning of the podcast. I have not looked at her recollection deck.
yeah. You're just confidently smiling and talking and hoping you get through another podcast without reading anything. I love that. Let's talk quickly about Byakko, the White Tiger, and the Fabled Emerald Fatestone. So this is a fascinating, honestly, this is maybe one of the ones that's most exciting to me just because I think it's really cool. I just don't know if it's going to be as viable as some of the other ones, but we'll have to see. This is an 8 cost, so we need 8 quest counters to flip it. There is a misprint on this card where it actually says you put the quest counters on Fabled Emerald Fatestone. That is a misprint. The errata is there's a correction to it, basically, that they do go on your champion like the other ones. This one gets a quest counter or gives your champion one whenever you suppress an object. Very wind-like. It has a cool ability of just a 4 cost, rest this as a spell, suppress another target item, weapon, or ally. Activate this ability only once. Not per turn, just once.
Just one time.
Just one time. That is one time per instance of this object being in play, though. And that's where there's going to be some kind of maybe some cute or interesting play with this, where you can actually target this with like a baby green slime to suppress it, which then when it comes back, you will be able to reactivate that ability again because it's a new instance of the Fabled Emerald Fatestone. So that's kind of cool. And when you flip this thing, it flips into a Byakko White Tiger, who is a 6/6 massive beast with Spell Shroud and Vigor, and has the first animal or beast ally card you activate each turn costs 2 less to activate. So a little bit of that Sylvie Slime Sovereign peeking in there, which we love. And then also beast allies you control lose pride. So Byakko can lead the pack in just a gigantic storm of the strongest beasts in the game, which I think is really exciting too.
Yep. Yeah, that's sweet. And then last but not least, we have the Fabled Sapphire Fatestone, the Water Fatestone. 9 cost. At the beginning of your Recollection phase, each player puts the top card of their deck into their graveyard. So it gives you basically a Fractal of Rain for you and your opponent. And then whenever one or more cards are put into your graveyard from your deck, put a quest counter on your champ. And then again, 9 quest counters transforms this. Dan's been saying flip a lot. The actual keyword is transform.
Thank you.
Go back and forth. People are going to use both, but if you're studying up for the judge test, remember transform, not flip. But yeah, this transforms into Genbu Black Tortoise, which is 3/9 Spell Shroud Taunt with Gojo bonus 3 reserve. Genbu gets plus X life until end of turn, where X is the amount of water cards in your graveyard. Activate this ability only once per turn. So if you're filling your graveyard up like you need to transform him, he's going to get a real big butt when you activate this ability. And he's just going to sit there and be a huge wall for your opponents to try and get through to try to get to Guo Jia.
We're not going to talk too much about him, but I think your head should be definitely cranking a little bit when you hear that there's a new Tamer beast that triggers off of self-mill, and then can just basically lock down a board because your opponent can't deal 20 damage to him in one turn to get through.
Yeah, it's so weird. We thought we all were out of this water meta now that Icebound Slam is banned, and we might be back in this water meta. Like, before we move on too much, the neat thing about all these Fate Stones, the Fabled Fate Stones that start in your Regalia deck, is that you basically get all these effects for free when you get to level 1, for the front side anyway, right? So like these are all kind of like things you can build your deck around to do cool things with. And like just giving yourself a free Fractal of Rain just for leveling up is kind of insane.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah. So we might be going back to water meta. We thought we were out, but we're probably not.
It turns out Fractal Polar Depths was set up for the Genbu deck to release here in Abyssal Heaven, and Sylvie and Nico and the clerics all just kind of grabbed it, and they were like, "Nah, this is our thing now." And and poor Genbu out here in the cold, just waiting for some penguins of his own. But it's about his time, so it's exciting to see how that will impact the Water Mill metagame. But let's okay, so we'll leave the theory crafting to you all right away about what sort of beasts you want to play and how you want to build your own takes on Guo Jia. But let's talk about some of the support that comes in the deck. Well, let's talk about actually Guo Jia's level 2 and 3 before we even get to that.
Yeah, so these are super important cards for her as well. They help finish off and not finish off, but like accelerate to your fabled beasts, your Senju, your auspicious beasts. Her level 2 has an on enter of you may put 2 quest counters on Guo Jia. If you don't, draw a card. And then a very spicy ability in Lineage Release, negate target activation or trigger that targets a Fate Stone or Fate-bound object you control. So you'll notice that all 4 of those big fabled Fate Stones we just described, they transform into Fate-bound objects, into Fate-bound allies. So this Lineage Release will negate anything that targets them if they can get around Spell Shroud. Like if they target with the Dream Fairy, or they target with an Arrow Trap, or just kind of other random non-spell cards. Guo Jia level 2 is here to save the day. But you have to get to level 3 before you can use a Lineage Release, obviously, because you can't Lineage Release to the top of your champion. So that requires you to go to level 3, which is also very spicy. Something we've seen here in a long time. Level 3 normally costs 3 memory. Guo Jia has a line of text that says it costs 0 memory. As long as you control a Senju ally, which again is what all of these transformed fabled Fate Stones are, this card costs 3 less to materialize. So you can essentially just like transform your Fate Stone, go to level 3. Now all of a sudden that's free. You've got this sweet Lineage Release ability to protect it. You still have an on enter on level 3. On enter, you may put 3 quest counters on Guo Jia if you don't recover 3, which is again like a really nice ability. Lets you kind of figure out where you are in the game and play to kind of what's going on. If you were able to get your fabled beast transformed early, your Senju transformed early, you get a free level up and some free protection for your big boss monster. If you need a little bit of help getting over the finish line there, like Genbu, Seiryu both have a lot of quest counters that you need to get. This can kind of put you over the hump. And if you were there, you get an extra 3 life too. So just, really awesome champion stack here. I think this is like one of the coolest designs they've done yet. And really kind of like will flip, I think, the kind of floating memory dungeon guide metagame on its head a bit.
Yeah, because this is like a champion that you don't really... We're still, okay, as far as the competitive builds, we still need testing, and we still need to discuss whether or not you actually do put Dungeon Guide in, because Dungeon Guiding to 3 does turn on your level 2 activation sooner, so it's really going to come down to like how aggressively Guo Jia needs to get that protection up based on how aggressively the metagame is trying to stop Guo Jia's beast. But as long as you don't need that Dungeon Guide, you can just take the free level from the Guo Jia whenever you get your Senju out, which is pretty cool. And you can transform that Senju they're all fast speed abilities. So you can do it at the end of your opponent's turn when there's very little that they can do about it anyway. And then you can just immediately level to 3 for free the next turn. And just a beautiful thing to remember about this is that the quest counters can continue to stack on Guo Jia even after you've already, transformed your Senju, meaning that you can hold them for if you happen to need them again, if your opponent does manage to get some interaction through and you need to get that Fate Stone out a second time, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later as well. But yeah, it's just a great, well-rounded kit with lots of resiliency and options.
Yes. Yep. It's going to reward like a lot of knowledge of the metagame and know what's going on when you're playing Guo Jia for sure. Just everything is beautiful. I love this design quite a bit.
I'm gonna just like clip all of these quotes of you saying these things about a tamer.
Well, there's a reason why I haven't used the T word explicitly. So
yeah, you're right. You've ruined my clips. You'll just say it was about Dao Chan or something. Okay, so let's talk about, because we've talked a lot about sort of the core bits here. I don't think we need to necessarily make this a 2-hour podcast. So we're going to let's do a few quick hits from the material deck before we dig into the main deck, because really right now you should have a pretty good understanding of a lot of what Guo Jia's trying to do. It's not that hard to figure out. You're just trying to activate the abilities, transform the Shenju, and kill your opponent with it. But there are a couple of pretty cool cards in the material deck that are going to be helpful to achieving those goals. One of them, and I think one of the cards that people are most excited to see in this Recollection deck, is the Portentous Tengu. The Portentous Tengu or Tengu, I'm not really sure. Maybe Bell will be able to let me know at some point too.
It takes 2 to Tengu, Dan.
Oh my god, that's so good.
That's not true. Actually, it takes 3, as you're about to describe. But
it's true. It does actually take 3. My god, you're so okay. Wow, I can't even. Okay, Portentous Tengu is a 0-cost regalia item tamer artifact with Guo Jia bonus. On enter, put a quest counter on your champion. So that just gives you a free quest counter, which is dope. And then has pay 3, as Taylor said, not 2. You have to pay 3 to banish Portentous Tengu and then draw a card into your memory. Which, for those of you keeping score at home, is a backup charger. Without a power cell, and instead for Guo Jia gets a quest counter. If you're out there and you are one of our many newer players to the game who has seen the cost of backup charger and well, that's just stupid. I'm not paying that for anything. That's completely fair. That's a dumb price. It's crazy how much it costs. But the good news is if you can pick up a Guo Jia Recollection deck, you will have the Temu version of backup charger available for use. It is right here for you. Now it doesn't make a power cell, and like water decks, that is a drawback. And in some other, even in random other decks, like that power cell can actually, people steal games with random automatons and the power cell. But in Guo Jia, you're happy with this. In Guo Jia, you might want to run both, honestly. I'm not totally sure, but it's
yeah, I mean, this is definitely like wish.com backup charger, unless you're Guo Jia, right? And then all of a sudden it's like the iPhone Pro of backup chargers. Pro Max. So I mean, I like that we're getting some more options here just outside of backup charger and Grand Crusader's Ring of ways to draw from your Recollection deck if that's what decks want. And making them a little bit more thematic also just helps. You obviously can't run a material deck full of backup chargers. So having some options for us that are like have meaningful decisions is really nice. And should help like relieve pressure on backup chargers as well for the decks that want that over Tengu.
Yeah. Definitely. We have a couple of other cool material deck cards. We have the Fated Keepsake. I think this is an interesting one. I'm curious to see how this makes it into Guo Jia decks competitively, but it depends on the metagame, but it has some serious potential here. It's a 1-cost regalia item tamer accessory, and that's important that they have costs actually, because that helps Seiryu get quest counters, which is really good. It has on enter, draw a card. And I love seeing that because that always gets my mind churning. Like, hey, baby green slime can suppress this in order to get card draws. That's really cool. And then Guo Jia bonus. If your champion would take 7 or more damage while you control 3 or more Fate Stone and or Fate Bound objects, prevent all but 6 of that damage. We're going to see a little bit of a trend in some of these cards where they're looking almost like kind of like the slime deck was looking for a lot of slimes. There are a bunch of cards in here that are looking for a bunch of Fate Stone or Fate Bound cards. And this is another one of those. But this is a cool card that says if you would ever take a single chunk of more than 6 damage, it's going to get reduced down to 6. So it's like an always active safeguard amulet against things like the big fireballs, the arcane blasts, that kind of stuff. Or as I had to deal with in a little bit of testing the other day, Shadow Strike for 20 actually only does 6 when this is in play. Yeah, I had to like find a Zephyr or something to get rid of it for the turn so I could actually dive in for the kill. And it did put me back a turn, which was kind of cool.
Yep.
So yeah, that's Fated Keepsake, kind of an interesting card. And then the last one I'm going to talk about here, just because it's the last one I think is actually more value than people realize right away. Kind of an interesting card is Band of Burning Verdict. This is a 2-cost regalia item tamer accessory with on enter draw cards. It's really doing the exact same thing the Fated Keepsake was doing, just like banish and then draw back. This only draws 1 back, but that's okay because this class bonus ability is actually pretty good. As class bonus, rest this. Target animal or beast ally you control gets +1 power and gains True Sight until end of turn. So allows your Seiryu, for example, to be able to attack into stealthed targets, making it very difficult for your opponent to be able to actually stop you from getting those on attack triggers. Very useful ability, adds aggression, does cycle cards, does put quest counters on. The fact that it banishes 2 is like key because you'll have lines where you're like, oh, I really just need to banish 2 this turn, then I can actually get Seiryu out right away. And this is a great option for that.
Yep. Yeah, this I think too on this like 2 cost here is really fun. Drawing a card back, obviously you kind of need it when it costs 2 cards, but just like giving you a little bit more space to play, at least from a design perspective of how to cost these things and how to make things like relevant. I think like you could see this effect. Well, I mean, we have seen this effect kind of on like Ghostlight Glass, right? Where it's a 0 cost regalia, I think, but it costs 3 reserve to actually rest it and activate the effect.
It's so much.
Yeah. Whereas being able to just activate this for free every turn is a lot like much more impactful over the course of a game and a lot easier to accomplish. One thing quick I want to mention before we get out of the material deck is we failed to mention the element on Guo Jia level 3, which is Luxem. I think everybody hopefully knew this already, or if they've been paying attention, they have. If they haven't been paying attention, they haven't, which is fine. But she's Luxem, which means she's going to play with all of the Luxem Tamer cards from Abyssal, or not Abyssal Heaven. This is the set Abyssal Heaven, but from
Mortal Ambition.
Mortal Ambition. Thank you. So all those cool cards about like playing a bunch of animals from your memory or revealing things, putting buff counters on animals and beasts. She's going to play really well with that as if you've picked up some of those cards from Mortal Ambition. Yeah. She's not really doing too much of that in the Recollection deck, which is fine because all these Fate Stones and everything are so much cooler than that.
Yeah, she does do a little bit of it, but it's kind of your weaker line with her. Your stronger lines are really just going right into Seiryu, and also just playing a lot of these others. There's actually some very good Fate Stones. So why don't we dive into that? Taylor, I've been reading a lot of cards. Do you want to start with some of these key Fate Stones?
I'm going to start with my favorite one here, Baby Gray Fate Stone.
Yes.
It's actually called Fate Stone of Revelations, but it's a 2-cost item Tamer Fate Stone. On enter, you may reveal 2 Fate Stone and or Fate Bound cards from your hand and or memory. If you do, draw a card. So very reminiscent of Baby Gray Slime from the Sylvie Recollection deck, obviously. And this is going to be a pretty key component, I think, in a lot of her decks that aren't going too hard onto one element. Just as a piece of consistency. If you can put the Fate Stones in your deck to enable this, it's going to be a card you want to see in your opener every single game. And then it also has a Guo Jia bonus, pay 6 reserve. You transform Fate Stone of Revelations, and this ability costs level less to activate. So if you're level 1, it costs 5, level 2 costs 4, so on and so forth. And this transforms just into a 2/2 ally tamer beast Fate Bound Dragon. So there's a sweet 2/2 norm beater to kind of help you control the board or just deal some extra damage to your opponents.
I think there's something that people are going to feel out as they play this deck a little more, because right away the prospect of paying, you're never going to pay 6 because of Guo Jia bonus. Minimum is 5, but even at paying 3 later for a 2/2 is like, it's not like that exciting late in the game. But there's a lot of unnoticed advantage to having an ally that comes out at fast speed, later in the game when you can start cracking in with it, when you have the extra resources. You don't have to like plan your whole turn around this. You can keep up interaction and you didn't need it. Okay, great. I'll just put a 2/2 out. And it did that without walking right into removal, which is what happens, with a lot of other of your animals. And you you get to control when it comes out and then hold up a bunch of interaction afterwards if you want to. These dumb little 2/2s on backsides of cards, they're way better than you think they are. And if you know who I'm talking to, if you were like, man, this seems really bad. Like, yeah, trust me, this is these are not as bad as you think.
Yeah, no, it's very impactful. Like, and basically one way to think about it too is you're kind of giving up the ability to attack with it right away for just a lot of flexibility and a lot of safety. It's a lot more difficult to interact with an item than it is an ally. You can't attack an item, obviously. And if you make it through the turn, you've got some extra cards. You put them down in your Recollection to transform it. And you pick them back up, and now you've got a full grip to do whatever you want. And also an extra ally that kind of came out not as a surprise. It was on the board the whole time, but it's something your opponent maybe was not able to play around effectively, or had to hope that you were to interact with them in some other way, such that you could not then pay to transform this ally. And then, of course, we already talked about Seiryu like cycling cards and giving you an extra card essentially for your opponent's turn. Like that might be the difference between transforming a Fatestone of Revelations and not. So I think this is going to see I think you'll find that this is actually a very playable card, and also just like a very effective ally over the course of a longer game anyway.
Yeah.
We've got another really impactful Fatestone here called Craigie Fatestone, which is a 4-cost norm item Tamer Fatestone.
Whenever so mad at this card.
This card is so sweet. This one is not as immediately impactful as Fatestone of Revelations. You're not drawing a card off of it right away. Whenever an opponent materializes a card with memory cost 0, put a buff counter on Craigie Fatestone, and then Guo Jia bonus, rest it, transform Craigie Fatestone. Activate this ability only if there are 2 or more buff counters on Craigie Fatestone. And then it transforms into Obstinate Craigback, which is a 2/2 ally Tamer Beast, Fangbound, Pangolin with Spell Shroud. And then, of course, since you had to put 2 buff counters on it to transform it, it's effectively a 4/4 when it transforms. This is quite the card, actually. Like hold on, I didn't even say what the passive effect was. I said Spell Shroud, and I left it at that. I left you hanging, listeners. I'm sorry. The whole the creme de la creme here, the whole reason why you're going through this is you're going to transform it and get this awesome static ability in that your opponents cannot materialize cards with memory cost 0. So they cannot materialize Grand Crusader's Ring. They cannot materialize Quicksilver Grail. They cannot materialize Backup Charger. They cannot materialize Safeguard Amulet. I could go on for days. Actually, I can't go on for days. I can go on for maybe 30 minutes probably. There's a lot of 0 cost regalia, but there's not that much. But it stops all of them, which is the really nice part. It's going to really hinder your opponent, and then they've got to figure out a way to get rid of this 4/4 Spell Shroud in order to play their key pieces, right? It's going to really just make their day a nightmare.
Every single game when I'm playing Dao Chan against Guo Jia, my opponent drops turn 1 Craigie Fatestone, and often they back it up with there's a couple of cards in here we're probably not going to touch on them just due to time, but there's a couple of cards that can put buff counters. There's at least one card that can put buff counters on Fatestones before level 3. So you can get this out a little faster. Your opponent isn't in all full control over whether or not it flips. And my opponent just seems to always I'll go, okay, fine. I'll do 1 0 cost because I really need to put something out here. I'll put out a backup charger or whatever. I'll get that done. And then my opponent goes, cool. I'll put a buff counter on it, flip it. And I'll go, oh, great. Now half of my material deck I'm completely locked out of it. And I have to do dumb things like leveling when I don't want to, or not materializing anything, which feels so awful. And meanwhile, I'm getting beat down by a 4/4 Spell Shroud I can't do anything about. This card is it's really good. This card is
very
really
strong. This effect is, if you look at it, it seems pretty like quaint, but don't underrate it, because it will take over a game very quickly. And your opponent is going to have to throw a lot of resources at it to actually get rid of it. Assuming they didn't see like an early Dream Fairy or something. And even then, it like at least messes up a turn for them. If you like in the early game, if you get this flipped like turn 2 or whatever, or transformed to turn 2, and they haven't like gone to level 1, they might not want to at that point either. They might still be trying to like kind of filter their hand and collect some cards, some influence. And this just really just throws a huge wrench in the works big time, and can open some really big windows for you.
Yeah.
The last Fate Stone I think I want to talk about here before we move on kind of to some of the other support cards is Lava Plume Fate Stone. Yes. This is like another really, really impactful card in this deck. It's a 2-cost fire item Tamer Fate Stone. This one has fast activation. And on enter, as a spell, deal X unpreventable damage to target unit, where X is the amount of other Fate Stone and or Fate-bound objects you control. So it's going to come down, and if you're playing Guo Jia, it's likely going to deal at least 1 damage because you have some sort of Fabled Fate Stone, probably Fabled Azure Fate Stone in the Recollection deck here. So it's going to do at least 1. Unpreventable damage, by the way. And if you've played your Baby Gray Fate Stone, if you've played your Craigie Fate Stone, it's going to deal 3 damage. It doesn't take a lot for this damage to build up. And then it has Guo Jia bonus for reserve, transform, Lava Plume Fate Stone. And this one is also just an insane backside to this card. It is a 2/2 ally Tamer Beast Fatebound Bird. With on attack, you may discard a card if you do draw a card. So we've got our very own Hasty Messenger Fate Stone now. And it's going to come down, probably kill something. You're going to transform it in your Recollection, and it's going to sit there and cycle cards for you and find more impactful cards for the matchup.
Yeah, this Lava Plume Fate Stone is a smart card to put in this deck because it is one of Guo Jia's, like, a lot of people like to think of Fire as the deck that can't really interact with you. That's not entirely the case, and there's a couple of, we'll talk about a few more here shortly, but there's a couple of pretty sweet little interaction pieces that are here. One of them is this Fate Stone not only can be used to obviously deal with threats, like if your opponent is trying to go in and you just flipped your Obstinate Cragback, and your opponent's going to be like, okay, I'm going to take 2 allies and swing into it. This has the ability to just surprise, actually, after you play that second one, I'm just going to nuke it from orbit. Fast activation. The fast activation on this is like the key. That's what makes it so good. Mm-hmm. So you can use that to protect things like your Obstinate Cragback, so you continue to disrupt and deal more damage to your opponent. You also can use this when you're diving in with Seiryu and then you're doing the Arcane Blast, and your opponent goes, oh ho ho, I got you. I have a water barrier or a spell shield or something. They go ahead and put something that'll absorb the damage from the Arcane Blast, and then you can just say, I will let that resolve. And then before my Arcane Blast resolves, I will play Lava Plume Fate Stone and deal 3 or even 1. It doesn't matter. It could just be the 1 unpreventable damage to you, which will then break whatever water barrier or spell shield or anything with 0 result because it's unpreventable damage. And then your full Arcane Blast can still hit them. Clutch card. I can't imagine building Fire Guo Jia without this.
Yeah. No, this is like easy a top 3 best card in any sort of Fire Guo Jia deck. It doesn't matter if you're building in the Recollection deck here, if you've moved on to Suzaku and the Fabled Ruby Fate Stone, it's going to be very good there as well. Just all-star card.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about a couple of the cool interaction pieces that are going to go with. So we're going to have all these Fate Stones and these Fate-bound allies and stuff. What are we going to do to sort of continue to, fire things, churn through the game, keep finding cards, keep doing things, and sometimes have cheeky little interactions to our opponent as well. This is one of my favorite cards in the deck, which is Broken Promises. Broken Promises is a 1-cost, fast speed, action, tamer, fate-bound skill. So this is a fate-bound card itself, which is very important because you can reveal this to Fate Stone Revelations in order to get that card draw. It is, and it's fast speed again. With that 1 cost, as an additional cost, to activate this card, sacrifice a Fate Stone item or a fate-bound ally. And then it will draw a card into your memory, and as a Guo Jia bonus, put a quest counter on your champion. So this is just like our, a lot of people are used to things like Primordial Ritual right now. If your opponent goes to attack your ally, you just go, okay, in response, I'll just sacrifice the ally then to Primordial Ritual to get a little bit of extra benefit out of it. Broken Promises does a similar thing where your opponent goes to take out your Firebird Trailblazer or something. You can feel free to go, oh, that's fine. I'll just sack it, get another quest counter, draw a card to replace the Broken Promises. And you're basically turning your stone or your animal you're going to lose into a quest counter in that example. It's got cheekier things it can do, Taylor. Why don't you let the audience know where this is a really cool interaction piece?
So if you go back and you remember Suzaku, the backside of Fabled Ruby Fatestone, and its excellent 4/3 stat line, it also has that sweet on banish ability where you can banish 3 fire cards from your graveyard and bring it back to the battlefield transformed. So Broken Promises just lets you completely abuse that, because as you have to sacrifice Suzaku for that banishes it, which is going to trigger it. So not only is Broken Promises going to actually resolve, get you the card into your memory from Broken Promises, you also get to basically replay your Suzaku and attack with it again after you've banished those 3 fire cards, and it comes back transformed. So you can use this to get like 2 or 3 attacks in one turn with Suzaku if you have enough fire cards in your graveyard. On top of that, it also just like saves Suzaku from any sort of like weird removal or anything your opponent's doing to it. Let's say you attack and they arrow trap it. You can just sacrifice it in response with Broken Promises and bring it back like the arrow trap never happened.
Yeah, let's
so this has been like
this.
One of my favorite plays with this so far. It's a lot of fun to just deal a ton of damage to your opponent that way.
There's, I think, a key interaction thing that, especially if we have newer players in the audience again, they're not going to fully grasp, I think, necessarily the nuances of how to interact with Guo Jia. So we will talk about it in a little bit, but just for the context here, you do have a card in the Luxem portion of this kit that allows you to replay a Fate Stone from banishment, specifically though from banishment. And the key to defeating Guo Jia is if you can find any way to tuck that Fate Stone back into the material deck, then Guo Jia's only recourse to get it out is to go all the way back down to level 0 and then level back up again, or to banish minimum 7 cards or 7 floating memory or something in order to replay just the Fate Stone, and then she still has to build it up from there. Both of those routes are in the competitive game are basically non-existent. They're not things that'll like realistically, or they're not things that can realistically result in you winning the game afterwards. But there is a card, like I said, that'll be able to get a Fate Stone back from banishment, which is much more playable. A card that actually you may even just put at minimum in the sideboard of any Guo Jia deck you build. Not 100% sure, but maybe. The cool thing about Broken Promises, like Taylor says, is it lets you sacrifice that ally, sacrifice that Shenju, and that's critical because by the rules of the game, any effect that would send a Regalia back to a zone like your hand or your memory or your deck will send it back to the zone it came from instead, which is going to be the material deck. So if your opponent plays Arrow Trap, and you're going to start to see, I think if Guo Jia's played, you're going to start to see a lot of Arrow Traps in decks with no preparation counters. Or even if they have preparation counters, they'll choose not to prepare this thing because Arrow Trap's unprepared version will send an attacking ally back to hand. And that means that if you attack with your Seiryu or your Suzaku and they Arrow Trap it, it goes back to your material deck and effectively shuts your game off. You do have that Guo Jia level 2 that you can lineage release if you're at level 3 to be able to stop the first one. But if they then play a second one, your best recourse for getting out of that is actually just to go, okay, fine, I will Broken Promises, sacrifice my Seiryu, and now I'll be able to use a card later to bring it back from banishment, because when they go to the graveyard, they get banished instead. That's a quirk about how Regalia work.
Yep. And then the card that's going to bring it back is going to be Advent of the Shenju, which is a Luxem card, actually. So again, important that you have to be level 3 to actually play this, but it's a 4-cost Tamer Fatebound spell. You put target Fatestone card from your banishment onto the field. If that card is a Regalia, put 5 quest counters on your champion. So yeah, this is gonna be how you get your Fatestone back after you've banished it to Broken Promises. And it's, if you're playing Azure Fatestone, the 5 quest counters you get puts you halfway there again to actually activating him and transforming him again. Broken Promises is obviously one more when that resolves, so that's up to 6. So now you really don't have to banish too many cards to transform him again. You maybe have to wait one more turn, but his effect at end of turn is going to let you banish a card from memory again and cycle that. Maybe you haven't materialized your Band of Burning Verdict yet, so that's 2 more quest counters if you materialize that on your materialize phase next turn. So
maybe you just have 3 quest counters already because you flipped your Shenju and then leveled to Guo Jia level 3 for free, right? And if you already have those 3 there, 5 from Advent and then 1 from Promises, you literally are just 1 away. And at the end of the turn you play Advent, you'll banish 1 to Fabled Azure Fatestone and you'll be at 10 and you can immediately flip back out then. So it's the Advent is a really powerful card. It does have a second ability too, which I don't want to get too in the weeds about the Luxem stuff, because really the interesting thing about Guo Jia is that Luxem is really, like, a lot of Champions level 3 is all about, okay, now you can play the cards that win the game. You know, Tristan and Shadow Strike. We have Crux and Crux. Anything Crux related is all about playing Crux cards. In this case, the Luxem cards are really just augmenting Guo Jia's strategy a little bit. And one thing Advent, I've seen this used one time so far, at least. One thing that Advent can do is a class bonus, element bonus. So it means you have to be Guo Jia level 3 to use this. Whenever you reveal this card from your memory, you may banish all cards in your memory. And then you get to draw a card into your memory for each card banished this way. Now, unlike Xander level 3, who is entirely built around, okay, I'm going to reveal cards and get effects. You know, again, you would have to choose to be running effects that will reveal things from your memory to be able to use this. But that said, there's some compelling reason to do that. I think in Fatestone of Heaven, we'll look at one more Fatestone here, but this is one that you don't get until you're Guo Jia level 3. Fatestone of Heaven is a 3-cost item Tamer Fatestone with very powerful on enter. Destroy target non-champion object with memory cost 1 or less or reserve cost 5 or less. This can destroy a lot of things in the game. Most allies that get played. Most regalia that get played. I mean, the list of things it can't hit are short and mostly Shenju now at this point. And it has an additional... So, I mean, you get that on enter. That's dope. This is playing like an Excalibur in your Guo Jia deck.
Yep.
But then you have the Guo Jia bonus of pay 3, reveal all cards in your memory. If 3 or more Luxem element cards are revealed this way, transform Fatestone of Heaven, activate this ability only once per turn and at slow speed, which will then transform it into Heavenly Drake, a 3/3 with Spell Shroud, Vigor, and on death recover 3, which is just a pretty stacked late game. Like, this is almost like this is finally like a viable advanced element unit, right? It's just got a lot of stuff on it. It's good.
One of the neat things about this too is, like, this is something you're not afraid to like banish as you level up either. There's just some like random, like, again, like, you've got Advents of the Shenju in your list because you need a backup plan for in case they take care of, say, Ryu, right? Like, it's going to be really difficult for you to actually win the game without him. So you're probably playing some amount of those. If you banish this on your way up to level 3, you can play Advent to get this back. And now all of a sudden Advent is like a removal spell, like an Excalibur as well. Bringing this back instead of, say, Ryu, if you don't need to bring him back. So, like, a lot of neat things you can do with this in this deck.
Yeah, it's a cool package of, I mean, I don't think we're going to go too much into other Luxem cards here, but it's a dope little package of extra stuff and extra support. And just a note that Luxem Sight is not class bonus. So if you want to dive into more of the Luxem revealing shenanigans, you can get a bunch of Recover 3 built into Guo Jia, and you too can have like 50 health for the opponent to have to chew through before they can take you out, which is fun.
Yep. Yeah, you can only like use this Fatestone of Heaven reveal effect once per turn, but you probably don't need to use that too many times before like you've recovered 6, like 3 or 4 turns in a row. Like just very difficult for an opponent to get through that if that's the direction you're going.
Taylor, you know very well how many harmonious mantras you need to not lose the game. Right?
Oh, yeah. I'm very aware. Yeah.
One.
It's not a lot. It's usually just one. But yeah, moving on, I think too, there's like some other really good interaction pieces in here. Well, I guess not. This isn't an interaction piece, but I do want to point this out really quickly as well, just because it's like another card that's really good at just keeping velocity up while also getting out your big Shenju, which is Journey's Beginning, which is a 3-cost fast action Tamer skill to draw a card. And then if you're a Guo Jia, you get to put a quest counter on your champion. So you're basically like cycling a card, putting a quest counter on your champion, having a good time moving forward. There's not like a ton of cheeky things you can really do with this, but it is just kind of like a nice staple, I guess, for Guo Jia decks that require some extra oomph in getting their beasts out, right? Mm-hmm. Shizaku, you're going to be dealing a lot of non-combat damage probably. This one's not too bad, but like Byaku, whose ability you can only activate once per instance of Byaku or Fabled Emerald Fatestone, he can't suppress himself to transform like Seiryu can banish your memory to transform. So this kind of helps speed that along. But the card that really gets me excited here from the Recollection deck, and I think we'll see a decent amount of play just throughout in general, is Expel the Departed, which is a fast action Tamer Fatebound spell. So again, another spell you can reveal to Fatestone or Revelations to draw a card. Level 2+, this costs 1 less to activate, but then you destroy up to 1 target Fantasia. And if you control 2 or more Fatestone and or Fatebound objects, you draw a card. So again, we have been in this water meta for a while where we're seeing fractals everywhere. This blows those fractals up. That meta is probably not going anywhere, especially with Genbu kind of showing up now too and milling your opponents some more. So it's nice to be able to continue to kind of stymie what your opponent's doing while getting some value out of it in the process. We saw towards the end here of the format, as Vanitas popped up, that Scatter Essence was an incredibly powerful card. And this is essentially Scatter Essence at fast speed, and instead of floating memory, it just draws you a card instead.
Yeah, the requirement to have 2 or more Fatestone or Fatebound objects is not difficult to meet when your Fatestone, your Fabled Ruby or Emerald or whatever Fatestone already counts as 1. Yep. This card, I feel like, did not need to go as hard as it does with like having the cost reduction to 2 when you're at level 2 as well. And frankly, one thing that I'm actually really looking forward to messing around with is in either Genbu or maybe some kind of spicy water Seiryu deck, getting to fracturize my opponent's thing and then expel it just to remove that value they got and instead just like cycle the expel in my hand into something else is like, it's like kind of that's a juicy little line that Guo Jia can easily pull off.
Oh yeah, and I'm thinking here how like Weebs just really wanted Guo Jia to not worry about Fantasias at all. Like I'm comparing this to a card that's releasing in Abyssal Heaven, Disenchant, which is just a 2-cost norm action that destroys target Fantasia, and it's also slow. So it's like it's always 2 cost instead of only when you're level 2+, but it's slow and it doesn't draw you a card or replace itself like Expel the Departed does. So they just said Guo Jia does not need to have problems with Fantasias. That's not part of her theme.
Yeah, but there's an interesting thing to Expel the Departed that I think we really should mention, because a lot of people maybe aren't going to pick up on it until they see it in a deck list, but there's nothing class bonused about this card. The draw a card is related to Fatestones and Fatebound, and are you going to play those outside of Guo Jia? Almost certainly not. Okay?
Yep.
But if you want a fast speed Fantasia removal in any deck, even at 3 cost, that's worth playing, but this actually goes down to the 2 cost when you're at level 2. This is a card that anybody can actually throw in their deck to get that fast speed Fantasia removal, and I think that's really relevant and really important.
100%. I'm already thinking about throwing this into my Merlin lists. We had to play Mystic Purifier before, and that card, it sucks. You have to pay so much reserve to destroy a Fantasia, and Merlin just does not care about the 1/2 body at all. Merlin would much rather have a 3 cost, more often 2 cost fast speed spell that takes care of it instead. So yeah, you will definitely see this in a lot of non-Guo Jia deck lists, I think. there's going to be a lot of people who play Disenchant, and they're going to be really sad when there's going to be things that they should have killed at fast speed. And then they'll be thinking after the tournament, man, if I only would have played Expel the Departed, I'd have a promo Sword of Seeking right now.
Oh, you do not want to be thinking that. You do not want to. Trust me, I've been in that exact headspace too many times in the last month to wish that upon anybody. Just put the Expels in instead. You'll be so much happier. The fast speed. You're already keeping up 3 for your backup charger anyway. Okay, just put the Expel in. It's fine.
Yep, definitely.
Taylor, I want to talk about just one final card, and that is a Luxem Regalia. Does that sound okay to you, or did you have anything else?
No, that sounds perfect. I think this is a great way to end.
Okay. I think this card is crazy. I think this card is... I don't know. It's a weird card because it hasn't been actually super relevant in really any of our Guo Jia games, but the way this card reads makes me think we just haven't built the right thing yet or something where this actually gets cracked. So we'll figure it out. But Incandescent Reliquary. This is a 1-cost Luxem Regalia item, Cleric / Tamer artifact. I just want to mention the Cleric part because you never know what's going to happen in the future. Class bonus, this costs 1 less to materialize. We love to see that. Just a free now Regalia once you get to level 3. And if you are Xander, you can still just get this out if you want to pay 1 for what it's worth. At the beginning of your Recollection phase, if you are the player with the least influence, become Merlin and draw a card. Okay, just a free extra draw card as long as, not if your influence is less than 6 or whatever. Okay, that's really important. It's if you have less influence than the other opponent or opponents in some weird multiplayer format. So when Guo Jia goes up, I mean, we play a lot of Guo Jia versus Dao Chan, and Dao Chan does not like having a lot of influence late in the game. That's just, she doesn't. But if you're going to go up against the Merlins, you're going to go up against the Fire Slimes or something that are still hanging on after Baby Gray got banned.
You're going up against the Water Arasanas, the Water Vanitas,
yep.
the Sylvie Nikos.
This is just
any of the basic element decks, really.
Yeah, this really just the Razor Gale, right? That's another one. It's like, oh, let me just have a 15 card hand, I guess. But it's okay. None of my cards actually do anything. I'll just draw. At the beginning of a Recollection phase, it's just draw a card. It's just draw 2 cards. This is Berserker Plate, but it does you no damage. This is Merlin, but it's every turn. You just get it's something that has this unchecked, just like, yeah, in the right matchup, this is going to absolutely turn the game over the course of a couple of turns because it's going to become a draw 2, draw 3. You should probably be finishing the game pretty soon at that point, but it's going to become a pretty powerful card to play. So I think this is one you got to look at and think about, and like at least be thinking about matchups and if this is going to be useful for you.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I don't think you're going to see like Luxem Xander play this card at all, because like that deck, once it gets to 3, it just builds up cards, and that's all it does. Yeah, so it can really combo kill you with Light Wheel versus Assault, right? Like anything it's playing at level 3, it's playing because it replaces itself. Guo Jia here, she might be able to just like string a bunch of cards and play a bunch of cards each turn in order to like keep her influence low enough to continue to draw cards and continue to fuel that, right? Because you really don't need to keep up a lot of cards in this deck, especially like if you've got a 4/12 taunter hanging out. You're totally fine just letting him take some hits. It's Spell Shrouds. You don't really need to spend a lot of cards to protect it that way. And you've also got that sweet lineage release. So one like just completely free piece of interaction there. So you're free to just like kind of go ham and play your hand out every turn once you get to level 3. And if you can do that and manage to kind of overwhelm your opponent with what you're doing, you're going to continue to draw cards off Reliquary, and you'll probably have a really good time. Yeah,
this just reads crazy to me. So I am very pumped to see. I'm really pumped in general about Guo Jia. I mean, if we're just going to head into sort of the bit of the recap, the conclusion, the outro here. Guo Jia is so fun. I think Guo Jia is such a neat idea where you get to pick kind of the beast that you're building around. It's almost like the beast, the Fatestone is your champion, and Guo Jia is just there to support. And when you think about it like that, to me, that is the essence of a tamer, right? Like the idea of, and we go back to our Final Fantasy or whatever game we were actually talking about, Beastmaster classes, where the whole point is the character that you put in your team actually contributes less than the animals the beasts you end up collecting or whatever. And that's the whole concept of this. If you want a champion that rumbles in there and starts attacking, you're looking at warrior, right? You're looking at some assassin builds, you're looking at that stuff. But when you want to play a tamer, you really want a champion that just says, okay, my champion is actually the big furry guy next to me, and I'm going to play this little tiny girl who's just gonna like pet him after he eats everyone or something. Yeah. Right. And that's perfect. I love that. I love that theme. I love that people get to choose what beasts they want to build around, and how much Luxem are you using? I think there's a lot of play here. Taylor, what are you excited now? Are you excited about Guo Jia? Can you tell the audience?
I'm very excited about Guo Jia. I don't care about the big fabled fate stones actually at all. Like the auspicious beats are very cool. I just like kind of how fiddly her recollection deck has been.
Okay.
You're going to take a lot of game actions, and they're all a lot of fun. And basically we went through a lot of cards, and a lot of them are double faced. So there's like just a lot of things going on, and a lot of things transforming and happening. And it's a lot of fun to just mess around with all that stuff.
Taylor, you could just buy like one of those fidget cubes if that's just all you're looking for. You just toy with all those.
I have a few of those. So.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah. That checks out.
Thankfully, I don't fidget with dice anymore. I just like kind of like shuffle cards or something while we're recording. But yeah, I've always got something in my hands. So
okay, well, no, okay, so fine. Guo Jia is the perfect deck if you love the whole theme of Tamer and you want to dive into that, or if you really just like flipping and moving and bopping and twisting your way through a game of Grand Archive, then I guess Taylor has told me that's who it's for also. So have fun, everyone.
Yep. And I think with that, we'll sign off here. We've kind of hit the highs of Guo Jia. We've stayed away from the lows. There's not really a lot of lows. Some of the Luxem cards in there are kind of lows. Like they look kind of cool. Some look cool. Those ones aren't lows. There's a couple that are definitely like, why is this a thing? But
I'll tell you the real low when people get to the full competitive game. Ensnaring Fumes. You do not ever want that card to be played. If you're
Ensnaring Fumes is a pretty good card.
It's really good against Guo Jia. So yeah. We'll see.
I spent a lot of time saying, I kind of hyped up my excitement for Guo Jia and how much fun she is and stuff, but I'd be lying if I wasn't about to say that I'm more excited to do whatever I can to counter the giant swarm of Guo Jia players we're about to see.
The truth comes out.
I am going to be playing a lot of Ensnaring Fumes in the future and a lot of Dream Fairies, and I will definitely be packing some arrow traps. So
yep.
I'm about to be a big wind gamer, I think.
If you can't negate Ensnaring Fumes, you need Broken Promises. You need it. You need it. Otherwise, Ensnaring Fumes just makes you shuffle up and go to game 2. It's tough.
Mm-hmm. Yep, very much so.
Okay. Anyway, go ahead. You're going to sign us off, but yeah.
Yes. So thanks everyone for listening. This has been the Recollection Step. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and hopefully, between Dao-Chan and Guo Jia, there's a champion for you. If there's not, there's go back to Mortal Ambition. There's some sweet champions there. Honestly, go back to Merlin. Merlin's great. We love Merlin.
We love Merlin here. We do stand Merlin.
There's a bunch of different ways to play the game now, and I'm really excited to kind of explore this new meta game that pops up with Abyssal Heaven, because there's a ton of different play styles that are viable at this point, it seems to me, and there's just going to be a lot of really sweet things you can do and kind of express yourself through deck building and gameplay if you want to do that. So, but yeah, next time, I don't know if we've decided on our topic for next episode. It will probably end up being some sort of Abyssal Heaven recap spoiler thing, but also maybe we've just gone over that enough at that point. 2 weeks is a long time. Sometimes 2 weeks is even 2 months. So we'll try not to make that not the case this time around. But we'll be back in 2 weeks for a sweet episode, either about Abyssal Heaven or about Grand Archive in general. So take it easy and stay frosty out there. It's a little chilly, and enjoy this new set when it releases on March 7th.
Bye, everyone. Was that it? That was the buy? That was the...
Yeah, that was it.
All right.
Yep. Yeah.
Works.
Yep. I made that one a little meandering because I hadn't done really any of that this episode. So
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.